When I lost my mother, I lost my sense of being. After being laid off, my mother died, and I had a solid year to be like, what is this? And then it hit me that I am my grandmother's greatest fantasy. I am an answered wish for my own ancestors. And the question I ask myself is then, what is the legacy that I want to leave for the people coming after me?
Hi, if you are still here, it means this conversation gave you something. Subscribe. It's helping an entrepreneur fulfill its journey. Let's build this community from scratch and make it bigger. Who are you maybe 10 years from now?
I think when I was in my 20s, I always had this vision of what I wanted to be in 10 years. I don't think I have that vision anymore. Life has become too hectic, and I'm actually just the opposite of how do we get to the soft life? And what is the soft life? And what is meaningful to me? And can I live a life that's meaningful, eat, and be in my purpose?
Beyond these labels, beyond being a daughter, being an entrepreneur, who are you?
That's a very profound question. Created a tagline for myself many years ago, and it was like, create to inspire, to share my insights for enthusiasm for living with others. And I think that we are all interconnected beings who share our version of this thing called life. I am the accumulation of my family, my ancestors, my friends, my teachers, my colleagues, my partners. And I think for myself as Jacqueline, I'm still becoming the person that I am right now is not the person that I was 10 years ago. I will admit that the biggest shift is something that most people don't want to talk about, which is when I lost my mother, I lost my sense of being. When you lose your parent, when you become the elder, it's a it's a it's a shift. And I am now the elder that the younger generation looks at, and I'm like, wait a second, I'm not a grown up. I remember we have slang, and the slang was like big people, and I'm like, oh, I'm now the big person. I have a level of appreciation for my parents and how they struggled through life and how they were just adults doing the best that they could with what they had at the time. And I like to say that I am my grandmother's greatest fantasy, which is my mother left her little village because she wanted to go to school and my grandfather wanted to marry her off to the neighbor next door. And she was like, nope. And here I am living completely independently with 2 master's degrees, doing whatever I wanted, having traveled to every corner of the earth that I've possibly had the curiosity to. And then it hit me that I am an answered wish for my own ancestors. And the question I ask myself is then, what is the legacy that I want to leave for the people coming after me?
You came from Canada, right?
Yes.
Why Sweden?
When I came to Sweden, it was supposed to be a sabbatical break from life in Toronto. And it was supposed to be a 2-year sojourn, and I was going to have a little siesta in Europe. It happened. It was a seismic change in the world. And truth be told, I actually got a job back in Canada, and I was supposed to move the February that the border shut, and I was supposed to move to Vancouver, and the border shut. And 6 years later, red pill, blue pill, Sweden chose me because at the time my life was here, my partner was here. I felt secure here. There's a philosophy that you root where you're planted, and I didn't want to be tumbleweed, so instead of rolling, I rooted down.
Have you always wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Not at all. I think being an entrepreneur is probably the craziest thing I've ever done with my life. And I think being an entrepreneur has humbled me in a way that I could never possibly imagine. I've always had a relative amount of success with my career. I have made it to levels of senior directors. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies. I've always managed to have a pretty good salary and do whatever I put my mind to. Actually, I would say that that is one of the hopeful things about my personality, which is like, I want to do this, and then I will just do it. And I've always had the capabilities of just being able to do it. I came to become an entrepreneur because as a woman, I got tired of being gaslit about what was going on with my body. I came to be an entrepreneur, and this is actually an interesting conversation about the Swedish experience. I was laid off my job during COVID, and it came as a shock, and it came as a surprise. And then after being laid off, my mother died, and let's just say I had a solid year to be like, what is this? I was fortunate to have the financial wherewithal to take that year. In between all of that, I discovered a lot of things. All these weird things started happening with my body. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor said to me, "Do you want an antidepressant?" And I'm like, "I'm not depressed. I just don't feel right." Do you know that women's health gets 5% of all the funding in healthcare? Do you know that women over the age of 40 are prescribed the highest amount of antidepressants? And the first question I asked myself was, how can I make this experience easier for others? And I was actually at a dinner party with a group of my friends in Toronto, and everyone was sitting at the table and was like, "My hair is falling out. I don't understand what's happening to me. I'm not eating more food, but I'm so fat. I can't sleep." And everyone was like unloading a different ailment. And I got up and I was like, "Ladies, this is what's happening." I had to um, prescribe and research for myself and solve all these things. And then I shared the wisdom, and the whole table went silent. And they looked at me and they were like, "How do you know this?" And I said, "Do you remember when our mothers used to be whispering in the hallway?" And we were like, "What are we talking about? This is it." And then you saw the aha moment go ding, 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 ding. And they're like, and then one friend, she's like, "My brother's a doctor and he's never said any of these things." I'm like, "Do you know doctors only receive a half a day of training to discuss menopause? Do you know that menopause and perimenopause and postmenopause affect women for 1/3 of their life?" 1/3. I'm like, "Welcome to aging." And then I recognized that I had really already written my pitch deck, and I'd already been like, "Okay, I'm doing this." And the greatest validation happened. One of my girlfriend's husbands called me and he's like, "Jackie, I want to thank you." "Why?" He's like, "I didn't know what was wrong with my wife.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was wrong with her. Because of what you said to her, she went to the doctor. She got HRT. I got my wife back. How can I help you?" That kind of validation you can't buy. And I also had worked for a startup here in Malmö, and it was in the wearable IoT device. And I was also privy to the fact that IoT devices were monitoring biometrics on the body. And it was like, how can these two things be combined? And I put my money where my mouth is and just, like I said, jumped off a cliff.
When you're like in your 20s, you want to work for these big companies and make loads of money. Weren't you afraid in this?
The beginning, no. Right now, yes. I will tell you something. Working for a Fortune 500 company was one of the worst feelings I've ever had in my life. I had
Why?
never worked so hard in my life. I had a boss who used to call me at 6 a.m. and then get upset with me because I wouldn't answer the phone. I was on call all day, every day. It was like I had no life. And I remember that particular job, I actually negotiated 4 weeks of vacation. And then I remember HR calling me and like, "You haven't taken your vacation." I was like, "I can't." And then they're like, "Well, you either take your vacation now or you lose it." Right. And then he was so angry that I took my vacation. I'm just saying there's a price to pay for those jobs, and there's a price to pay for that level of getting to success.
What is the price?
The price is your health and your well-being and your mental health. Coming back to this question of meaning, I want to help make women's lives easier. I don't want other women to suffer the way that I suffered. And I think that I can do this and make a living. My biggest issue with technology and how we use technology, and this is really relevant to the why, is that technology should be helping our lives be easier. Right
Mm.
now, technology is being used, unfortunately, by tech bros to extract value. How are we creating meaning rather than extracting value? So I think I am inherently on the opposite side of the spectrum, which is like, how can I improve the well-being of lives for women like me who make up 50% of the population and make a living doing that as well? When we actually look at the companies that are succeeding, they're all about the extraction of value. And I think we collectively, society, women need to take ownership of our bodies, our health, our well-being, and create systems and networks that are a benefit of us. And I put my money where my mouth is. And yeah, I jumped off a cliff. Do I recommend jumping off the cliff? No, I do not recommend doing it. In hindsight, I should have pulled back, did this a little slower, maybe held a part-time job, but that's not how I am. I just jumped in. And here's the interesting thing. Prior to this, I've always succeeded in what I wanted to do. This is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. This is so hard that it's just as stressful of all the stressful jobs I've ever had, but it's stressful in another way because I have to motivate myself and get up and do this and build the business networks and write the plan and deal with the individuals. And the buck literally stops with me. So that sense of ownership that you take over your decisions, your actions, your relationships, your negotiations. There is no out there. It's in here. So it's personal development and it's also professional development. And you're doing it and learning it in a circumstance that is nonlinear. You're learning and growing simultaneously. You're acquiring information simultaneously. It's stress, but this stress I accept because I asked for it. Whereas the other stress is that you realize you are a tool within a machine that's quite big. You're just a tool. You can drop down dead tomorrow and the machine will keep going. I think that a lot of foreigners go the route of being entrepreneurial because it's about creating their own network. And I think a lot of foreigners do this because they're not in the inside track of knowing where things are. Because in Sweden, I don't think the hires are done by job postings. I think the hires are done by interconnected relationships and recommendations. And there was a shift, a societal shift. We've gone from the traditional corporate culture to hustle culture. It's just that it's not being discussed.
I think one of the hardest part is that you have to do everything from marketing to reaching out to having a product that is working to solving the things that are not working with the product. How are you managing all of these things?
To be honest, not very well. Firstly, let's just talk about the difficulty. I think that firstly, women only receive 3% of all funding in the startup space. In Sweden, the number is a little higher for mixed teams. We have received some funding, but not a lot. I like to say over-mentored, underfunded. That's the first thing. Second thing is wearing many hats is actually exhausting. The type of kind of structural work, the operational work that is needed for a company actually overwhelms me on a daily basis. I can say with all honesty, I absolutely hate. Not even dislike, it's hate because that's not where my domain expertise lies in. And it's about relationships, and some relationships are great and some relationships are not great. Sometimes things work out, some things don't work out. You put your faith and trust that people will do what they say they were going to do. And sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And I do have a business partner. And we were at a meeting and he basically looked and said, I'm in awe at your ability to pivot. I do think the oddity is that my strength is that I can be quite responsive in real time. And I always make the joke that I always do my homework, meaning that I'm really good at researching something before I show up at something. So I'm constantly juggling A and B option in my hands. I would actually say that being a non-tech founder in an age where AI is changing what being a tech founder is has been so hard and so frustrating because it's like every time we think it's like a Rubik's Cube, every time we think we've had it, it's like we have to shuffle it again. And we're on the third shuffle at this point, which I hope is the last shuffle. Truth be told, I don't know how we got here. I don't know how we got this far. I think it's a commentary on responsiveness, learning, growing, changing, adapting, building, and all of it simultaneously. I like to say it's like we're building the car and driving it at the same time. And maybe the wheels are not perfectly circular.
Happen when things don't go the way you envision?
That happens a lot. I'm actually dealing with that right now. Two things happen. One, you have to reconsider and you have to refocus. I had a pretty big meeting yesterday and I brought this up that I said, do we keep doing this? Because we've gotten to a certain level of success, but we actually haven't gotten to where we want to be. So it's like we're here and we want to get to here. And the question is, it's taken us 2 years to get here. Do we have the fight to do the other 2 years to get here? And do we think the goals that we've put forward are achievable in that time period? Or do we say we've tried our best and close up? Because there are two philosophical points of view: fail fast, fail quick, and move on, or grit, dig in, and persevere. I'm realizing that I'm grit. I thought I was fail fast, fail quick, and move on. No, I'm incredibly stubborn. It's a Buddhist phase, but I also discovered it's a phase out of the Bible, which is fall down 7 times, get up 8.
Yeah.
It's the getting up. And so I'm the one who keeps getting up, even though I keep getting knocked down. But I didn't know this until we stopped and we looked back. And it was like, wow, we did that. I'm like, yeah, we did.
Was there any particular moment when you were like almost quitting?
There's been several. I was raised in church and I went to Catholic school, so I'm actually quite Catholic. And I'm not religious, but spiritual. And there have been moments where I would be like, okay, God, like, what's going on here? And then something would happen. I would feel like a door had been slammed in my face. And then the phone would ring and be like, hey, we've heard of you. We really want to come talk to you. And I'd be like, how is that? I just got such a hard no. But then this beautiful transition just happened. Every time a door closed, the window opened. And I kind of felt like I've never been so filled with so much almost. Then how do I get to almost to there? If this is the journey, we've run this portion, and this last bit is the bit I'm admitting that I don't know how to cross over. And I don't know if it's more people, more skill. I do think it could be more financing. And I think it's all of those things. But no, I've almost quit on numerous occasions.
In these moments, what keeps you motivated?
I didn't realize I had so much grit until I was in it. My friends all still call me for advice. I like to say my product works because I'm not just the person. It is an extension of how do I do this? How do I do that? And their reports and their feedback and their updates, one, validates me. Two, when I started this to presently, there's a lot of noise about menopause, but there isn't actually still a lot of actionable things. And I find it meaningful that 1 billion women worldwide will be over the age of 40. And society is so simplistic in its thinking that one solution is going to fit all. It's 1 billion women. I don't need to convince 1 billion women. I need to convince 1 million women. And that kind of passion is really significant. And I think that I also want to change how we talk about women aging and women's bodies, because I think women over the age of 40 who are no longer seen as reproductively viable have been told to go off into the sunset. And I think we as a society need to change that. I'm just as vibrant and meaningful as I was when I was 25, and I want to be the face of that change. And I think just by me getting up and standing and doing that empowers not just me, but other women. And then the last thing is that I've had so many women come up to me and just basically say thank you, that I think being a woman of color, being a woman who's foreign, being a woman who's lived these experiences, I think that for me, it comes back to what I just said, meaning about meaning. It's like, I know that this is impactful because people are so responsive.
What is exactly the final product?
We are an AI solution that helps women manage their menopausal or perimenopausal symptoms by tracking their biometrics from IoT devices and also scraping all of their data that they have in their health apps. We have just signed our first institutional client. We are in the process of taking everything we learned on the consumer side and making it a B2B side. And with that institutional client, we will go the CE certification route and modify what we're doing for the workplace and make it work that way. I took the lemons and I got lemonade. And,
Yeah.
with this institutional partner and partnership and a 3-year study, it actually totally transforms what we were doing on a consumer side. And most people can now see that the institutional value, in the sense that employers, workplaces want a solution to help women in those circumstances. And then if we get this CE certification as we go through this, then we can circle back to the consumer. So to answer your point, I didn't know I was doing a pirouette until I did it.
Top 3 skills an entrepreneur has to have in order to be successful.
Patience, the ability to negotiate relationships.
What does that mean?
It's all people. It's not technology. It's all people. And patience in the sense that when you're dealing with people, when you're dealing with tech, when you're dealing with circumstances, when you're dealing with all of those things, being able to take a step back and to scope. I think patience has been important, but for me, it's people management, pattern recognition. It's listening to your intuition. It's being able to unpack what's happening around you. It's being able to catch all of those things and the things that you have to synthesize it so that it's meaningful to you, not letting things slide, having those direct conversations, understanding the nuances, because it's also understanding the things in between. That's where meaning often lies. Like you think it's this, but it's actually that little bit
Connection.
there. And the last thing is, and this is something I struggle with, you're always selling, even when you're not. You're always selling.
Who is Jacqueline before the lights go on?
I'm a very quiet soul. I woke up this morning at 5:30 because there was a bird chirping at my window, and it filled my heart with so much joy because I knew that spring had returned. And hearing the cheep, 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 cheep made my heart smile. And so, like, it was such a beautiful moment where I sat there and I was like, it really is spring. Before I'm anything else, I'm still a child of this planet who enjoys just the act of being. And I remember thinking, oh, it's going to be a glorious day, all because I woke up listening to birds chirping.